The Quarken 27 T-top was an amazing boat. So good in fact that it went on to win our own motorboat awards in Dusseldorf in January 2023, as you can see from the sticker on the bow of this one. And actually this is the T-top version 2 with the wet bar at the aft end that the base T-top model lacked. Well, it was only a matter of time before this fledgling company from Finland used that same platform to introduce a cabin model. And here at the Finboat Floating Show in the Western Archipelagos of Finland, we have exactly that boat here. And this is it. This is the new Quarken 27 cabin. Let's just make sure our auto tabs are off. We're trimmed in. I'll strap on my kill cord and we'll have a little play. And I suspect I know what is going to happen, having driven the T-top and the T-top V2. It's not designed to be a difficult boat to drive or a frightening one for novices. We'll just spin ourselves around so we've got a bit more in the way of open water. Engage that gear, and it's immediately quite plain. It's a pretty quiet and refined boat with that F300 running on the transom and our various doors and hatches shut. We got a little bit of a gap up there at the sunroof just for a bit of ventilation. That's nice. And as we push right up onto the plane, the pickup's pretty good, passing 20 knots already. We'll give her a little bit of trim now. And we'll just have a little touch on those tabs as well. Now we've got plenty of free water around here, so we'll just nip over these wakes and turn to starboard. As you can see straight away, a little bit of hill, but nothing too substantial. And as I say, you're not gripping so much as slightly slipping. So the pivot point is directly under me, which feels fantastic. A little bit of grip, a little bit of slip. You slide yourself round. It feels really good. Relatively flat. Also feels relatively efficient, I have to say. Now we've had this boat out for quite a while this morning, and pretty much everything between 20 and 36 knots, we're seeing around about 2 litres per nautical mile disappearing from our fuel tank. And our fuel tank, as on the other models in this range, is 300 litres. So factoring in 20% of redundancy in that system, we're looking at 240 litres. So an easy cruising range, a good safe cruising range of about 120 nautical miles is absolutely fine for a boat of this type. There are no options in terms of that engine because it's designed for and around this, and it feels that way. It feels very well sorted, very compliant. Now in terms of the top end, if I push her on through, give her a nice bit of extra trim again, we're seeing around about 43 knots. And while that does ramp up, of course, the fuel flow, those cruising figures of 2 litres per nautical mile, well, that's not substantially more than the open and T-top variant, so that's very impressive indeed. Again, heeling around, sliding around that corner, pivot point directly beneath me, lots of lovely visibility, relatively refined, not too much noise from that engine. And of course, if you do get a bit stuffy in here, it's nice that you can slide this open, you can slide the side door open. You can slide the sunroof all the way back. You can open up that back door. You can get a fantastic through draft here. And I have to say, it's also worth noticing that in spite of the fact that we got the extra weight, the extra bulk, the extra elevation, the extra windage of this pilothouse structure, This is not a boat that needs constant tweaks on these trim tabs to keep her running flat and level. And it is a gentle day, moderate breezes, but she feels very well behaved in that regard, and I have to say, that's pretty much the story of Quarken to this point. Hulls that are easy to use, hulls that are fun to use, but just proper user-friendly family boats. And I'm happy to report from the driver's seat on this new cabin model that this pilot house equipped variant is absolutely no different in that regard. And the first thing to notice is, of course, the fact that the cabin structure is offset to starboard, and that keeps this entire port walkway wide open and free, just as it is on the T-top model. And that's a useful feature because that helped define those day boating spaces. So ease of movement fore and aft looks completely undiminished on this cabin model. We've also got that flared bow, again with offset anchor and a good step through forepeak with a ladder to get in and out of the water or down onto the beach. And this big pronounced flare too on the hull sides to keep you nice and dry. The same hull, as I say, the same hull windows, the same optional panel behind that to ramp up the style a little bit. The same engine too. In spite of the additional weight and windage of that pilot house, we've got a Yamaha F300 there, and that's the only choice. It did a great job on the T-top, so hopefully it will achieve the same kind of performance here. But of course, when you take a boat as good as that 27 T-top with a day boating arrangement as versatile as that, and it really is just about as versatile for a boat of that size as anything we've ever seen, you've got to make sure that the pilot house really works hard, gives you something extra, adds some extra value. And they tell me that that's exactly what this achieves. So let's jump straight on board and take a closer look. With that pilot house structure in place, the aft cockpit is, of course, relatively compact, so we don't have space for the wonderful L-shaped settee that we saw on the open and T-top models, but what we do have is a central storage unit. Your fenders go in there. I'll just show you, they're little cutouts, so it's purpose built. That's very handy. And the top here, though it doesn't have a cushion, is quite soft to the touch and doubles as a seat for up to 3 people. And we also have symmetrical swim platforms on either side of this towing arch, which incidentally also doubles as a really good grabbing point to make your way from side to side. On the starboard side, we have a pretty standard swim ladder. And this being a Nordic boat, on the port side, we've got a stern anchor, which of course works pretty much the same way as any other anchor. The difference being here that in this part of the world, they tend to nose into a beach or nose up to rocks. And this stern anchor means that they can pull themselves back out into deeper water before dropping that prop. So it just makes lots of sense to use a stern anchor. They're very prevalent here. And if you look at this cockpit, you would think, well, it doesn't do much besides seat 3 people who look a window square in the face. But actually this window here, this 3-part patio door at the aft end of this pilot house is actually quite clever. If I pop inside, we should be able to slide this all the way across. And then we can grab this backrest, pull that over, and there we have an aft-facing bench to look across to that aft bench. You can sit 5 or 6 people here, fit a table in the centre of the deck there, and you've got a nice place for a relaxed, convivial cup of tea. Elsewhere in this cockpit, we have the transom shower on the starboard side alongside the manual bilge pump. We also have little pockets for storage on both sides, and it's good to see actually that the wastewater, the diesel filler and the petrol filler are all on the same side, right next to each other in a little recess, so you don't make any spillages into your cockpit, and also you don't have to drape pipes right across your boat, which can be the case when they're all on different sides and in different locations. Now beneath the deck we have some pretty good storage under here actually. Certainly big enough for a couple of suitcases, bulky baggage, and it's nicely lined in the bottom there with a mat. Ahead of that we have the waste tank here and the diesel tank here, because this boat has diesel heating. The fuel tank itself is further forward beneath the deck inside that pilot house, right in the centre of the boat to improve weight distribution, and that's 300 litres as it is on the open and T-top models. Over here on the port side of the cockpit, beneath the port locker, we've got a trio of batteries, one of course to start the engine and two domestics. We also have the shore plough very sensibly placed above those, although when you've got a stern anchor at the port side, arguably that's not the most sensible place for your shore plough. But either way, let's make our way forward, minding our heads on the mouldings at the edge of the pilot house there. They're relatively sharp. And as we move forward, let's just close up that as well. There we are. Here's something that the existing open and T-top models don't have. That's the boarding step with a little tread plate there built into the bulwarks to take you onto the pontoon amidships. And that makes loads of sense because that's directly opposite the side door for that pilot house. So apparently that will be copied on the open and T-top models from next year onwards. Move forward again. There's a little porthole, an opening porthole to get some air down in the cabin. We've got a couple of steps take you up onto the foredeck, and as I say, the bow flare up here makes this quite an accommodating sort of space, and that's a good size of lounger for at least 3 people. Very comfortable. You've got a couple of speakers up here as well, plus as I say, the forepeak itself, you can use an offset anchor, so you've got a good step through section there. We've got a ladder built in there as well, and we also got more little steps here, boarding points. So ease of movement on this boat is every bit as good as it is on the open and T-top models. And as you might expect of the cabin variant, we also have a spotlight, a very modern version, LED lights in there, plus good roof rails that enable you to use a roof rack, so you can put your sea kayaks or your stand-up paddleboards up here, no problem at all. It's actually a really comfortable place to sit underway as well when the waters are relatively soft, and happily today they are. It's a really comfortably positioned rail here. As I say, there's easy space for 3 people, lots of lovely lumbar support. The quality of the fabrics is gorgeous, and also those boarding steps, or disembarkation steps I should really call them, on either side up there in the forepeak. They're a great little place to rest your foot. But in any case, let's move further aft along this port side deck and get into the pilot house through the side door here. As we do so, you'll see that there's a lip at deck level that sits about 7 or 8 inches proud. And if I look at the top end, turn this camera around, you'll see that the opening itself only comes to around about shoulder height. So you do have to kind of orchestrate yourself properly to get in there without banging your head. But once in there, things feel really spacious. That's partly about the big vertical windows, partly about that inverted screen, but also the fact the screen goes a long way forward of that helm position. There's also loads of light from above. Look, we've got this huge sunroof overhead that's manually operated here, and it goes way aft above the helm seats themselves, as you can see. At the moment, it's a pretty hot day. It's about 26 degrees here in Finland, and there's no screen there to provide shade. So that needs to happen, I think, on future models, just so you can orchestrate the amount of light you want in there, certainly for med use. Now, on the face of it, this seating seems quite simplistic. 2 forward-facing helm seats, of course, and a 2-man aft bench, again, facing forward. So 4 shelter positions in here, but actually it's much more versatile than you think. For a start, at the helm seats, we've got a couple of knobs here. One of those is to move it forward and aft. The other one is to rotate it. So you can rotate both these seats to face that aft bench. This is a great little trick though. If you need a 5th forward-facing seat inside the shelter of that pilot house when you're underway, you simply lift up this little partition here. That snaps into place nice and robustly. Fold up that backrest. On come the cushions, and they velcro into place. And there's your additional seat. It's neatly designed, it really is. Makes great use of the space, but so it should, because that is what the T-top model was all about. So it's good to see it transferred to the pilot house version as well. We also have foot braces down below, both for the aft bench and for the co-pilot seat when that's rotated. We don't have one here because that is a little locker down there with a shut-off valve for your gas, plus the bottom of the sink, and that pretty much reveals what's above, because if we lift this up, there we are. Now this is important. because what we have here in this little wet bar is something that is conspicuous by its absence on both the open and the T-top models, and it was a bone of contention for some. Now there is a T-top V2 model now which features a decent wet bar at the aft end of the cockpit to compensate for the absence of it on the other models. But really, to have a little wet bar here, only a single ring and a sink and a little bit of a prep area, it's a major bonus. We also have a fridge here built into the side of that unit, and if I pop aft and you take a look at these rails, well, these are ideal for an aftermarket barbecue that you just attach to these rails so you can cook outboard without getting any mess and grease on your decking or your fiberglass. So actually that's a pretty versatile solution, and that's exactly what we want to see on this cabin model. Down in the cabin things are exactly the same as in the T-top model, which in many ways is a good thing. So there's the bed in the V of the bow. Further aft we have a compact kind of heads compartment, not a compartment at all of course, because it's open plan with just a short partition there to separate the two sections off, but we do have a sink there. We also have the heating control there, the remote, and beneath this section here we have an electric toilet. The holding tank, as I say, is positioned further aft, just behind that, beneath the pilot house deck. And we do have a privacy curtain so you can close that off. So it's perfectly functional, just not as salubrious as some people might like. But of course this is a day boat, and even though it's the pilot house model, it remains predominantly a day boat. And on the port side we also have a little bench so you can change your clothes and enjoy a little bit of loftier headroom from the helm console up above. There's no doubt that this new Quarken 27 cabin had a really serious job to do in the wake of the success of that fantastic 27 T-top. And yeah, it does sacrifice a little bit of that day boating practicality, that day boating versatility that the 27 T-top has in spades. But it adds shelter, it adds the wet bar, and it does so without actually impeding your progress fore and aft, and without in any way diminishing the performance of the boat. All of that is very well intact, and it looks cool too. And that's quite an impressive trick on a boat of this scale, to get a proper size of pilot house on board but keep it looking as slick as the open and the T-top models. So yeah, if you loved the T-top but you wanted a wet bar, you could go for the T-top version 2, but for not a lot of extra investment, I'd advise you to consider this instead.